Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Buddyfight deck profile video. Today I'm going to be going over the Darkness Dragon World deck of Dark Venom Dragons, or more commonly known as Venom Swamp. Obviously, in the name of the deck, the whole point of the deck is to play as many Venom Swamps on your field as you possibly can, and then try to mill your opponent out using its ability and its various support cards. Venom Swamp is a interesting card because you could have as many number of Venom Swamps in your deck as you want. The only other card to have done that is Shadow Dragons, but it's definitely interesting when they use that ability. But what Venom Swamp does is when a Dark Venom Dragon on your field attacks, you mill the opponent 1, and then when this card is destroyed, you mill them 4. So, going over the new cards, the buddy of the deck is going to be Deathraider Lord Karma Overrun, and he's basically just a straight-up better version than the original Overrun. But if you want, you could also run the original Overrun just as a backup, but I'm choosing not to. But what the new Deathraider Lord Karma Overrun does is when he enters, you basically mill the top 4 cards of your deck, and then you get to put all swamp spells with set from among them into your hand. So he's just fishing for your swamp set spells. And then he also has the added benefit of, at the end of battle that this card attacked, you may destroy a swamp set spell on your field, and if you do, you gain 2 life and draw a card. He is not only trying to get out some of the swamp cards, he is also destroying them, so that way you could use both of the effects. And then as far as the new swamp set spell, we have Venom Dallal Swamp, and this is a really solid card for the deck because of what it does for Venom Swamps. Obviously, this card and all Dark Venom Dragon monsters on your field can't be destroyed, bounced, or rested, so your basic protections. And then the big thing that it does is when a Venom Swamp on your field is destroyed, you basically get to mill the opponent 3. So now it's turning the on destruction mill, instead of 4, it's going to be 3, and because you could have more than one of this set at a time, the mill can really add up really quickly, making this a pretty scary deck. And then the last new card that they got, Deathraider Igen, is basically just a swamp retrieval from your drop zone. The interesting thing is you could countercall this card, and it doesn't have a call cost, but all it's really doing is just putting a swamp from your drop zone back into your hand. And then as far as the rest of the deck goes, it's kind of just run your basic swamp package, and then just whatever support cards you feel like is necessary for the deck. So I'm choosing to run 12 Venom Swamps. You could run 14, you could run 16. It just depends on the ratios and some of the other cards that you're choosing to run. I'm also running Poison Mask because it helps protect the abilities of our Dark Venom Dragon cards from being nullified, on top of which, when the opponent mills, I can charge 2 gauge. And unfortunately, I can only use that once per turn, but charging 2 gauge is still pretty good, and the fact that you could do it on both your turn and the opponent's turn means you could get a decent amount of gauge pretty quickly. Next, I'm running Venom Pain because it destroys a Dark Venom Dragon, and that's what we really want. The ability to destroy a card on the opponent's field is kind of muted, but the fact that we destroy a Venom Dragon ourselves is what we really want. It also allows us to try to pick off a card on the opponent's field, and if we do, we get to charge a gauge and draw a card. Next, I'm running Venom Spell, which is a standard defense spell that also just so happens to recycle a Dark Venom Dragon monster from our drop zone to our hand. And then the last big Dark Venom Dragon card that I'm running is Deathraider Dizmal, which basically, on enter, you get to retrieve a Dark Venom Swamp from your drop and put it to your hand, and then when he is destroyed, you could destroy a Dark Venom Swamp and mill the opponent 2 and then gain 3 life. So he adds a little bit of extra mill on top of retrieving a Venom Swamp. And then I'm just running a whole bunch of good and interesting support cards. So I'm going to be running Gate of Darkness Dragon because I want to countercall size 1s, and the gauge cost doesn't necessarily really matter because I'm trying to mill the opponent, and when I mill them, I gain some gauge. So we could definitely afford the gauge cost to it. And that's really the only reason why I'm running this, is just to have the ability to call more size 1s. I'm running Buddy Block because it's Buddy Block, very standard and probably one of the best defense spells in the game. I'm running Time Sale because our life total can get pretty low and it has some interesting combos with some other cards, but we could afford the gauge cost and the life cost to just draw 2 cards because we really want to see as many set spells as we can. I'm running Kronos Reverse because it's the spell null of the deck, and spell nulls are pretty important. Running Diablos Recharge because getting to 1 life isn't necessarily super hard to make this card free, otherwise it's still just paying 2 life to essentially gauge 2 and draw 2 if our life is 6 or less. But most of the time we could get our life total pretty low ourselves, so that's not necessarily very hard, but again, we just need more draw to see our Venom Swamps. Running Million Edge because it's just another draw spell on top of which it mills each player 2, so we could utilize the fact that we might have a Venom Swamp in our drop zone. 100 Demons Sorcery Death Sacrifice because it destroys a monster on our fields and we get to draw a card for each monster destroyed. So obviously we have some cards that we want to be destroyed, and we get to draw more cards because of that. And then lastly, Grace of the Sun Deity because it's Grace of the Sun Deity. But as far as some of the other cards go, there's still some of the other Darkvenom Dragon cards that you could run that are all still pretty good. You could even run a card like Field Canceller to just act as a big board wipe for spells to just mass mill the opponent. And then you could run some of the Black Dragon mill cards because you're still just trying to mill your opponent out at the end of the day. You could run some other various forms of drawing cards. So Death Astray is pretty good because your life becomes 3, which turns some of our cards online, and then we get to discard our whole hand and draw 4. So if we already have a low hand count, then this is just drawing us more cards. And then Banquet for the Unrighteous is also just, again, acting as another searcher for a monster, and then it just mills us the rest, which sometimes we want to see our Venom Swamps in the drop zone. And then as far as some other cards to help keep us alive, Daredevil Crimson is just a pretty solid card because we could get him into the drop relatively easily, on top of which his Overturn ability to basically save us from dying is just pretty solid because then we could probably mill the opponent out on the following turn. So overall, it's just a very simple deck that's just trying to mill the opponent out as much as they can, as fast as we can, and a lot of the new tools definitely help us achieve that goal even faster. We don't necessarily care about damaging the opponent, we just want to mill them out and survive until we can mill the opponent out. As always, I'll have the deck list in the description below. Feel free to comment if you have any questions about the deck or just want to leave a comment in general. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video.